Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about progressive overload and understanding that it isn't necessary for you to progress all the time on the barbell. Now, I'm not talking about novice lifters, we're not talking about noobs, because noobs need to be progressing all the time because they're capable of it, and quite frankly, they're capable of gaining very oftentimes 1 to 2 pounds of muscle every single month. All right. And if, like I've said, if they're training hard enough, training their entire body and eating enough, it isn't uncommon for novices to gain 2 pounds of muscle every single month in the gym. So when you compare that to a lot of advanced lifters who are lucky to gain that in a year, we should expect to see their monthly progress be the same as yearly progress. In other words, the amount of weight that they add in progression to a barbell or a dumbbell or whatever they're doing, what movements they're doing, should very well be as much as an advanced lifter gains in a year. So if an advanced lifter can put 20 pounds or 25 pounds for whatever their sets of 5 or 10 on that exercise in a year, the novice should be doing it monthly, at least for a little while. I know people say, well, that's crazy. That means lifts would be going up, 20 pounds a month times 6 months. That's 120 pounds. Yeah, on a lot of big movements, that's not unreasonable. It is perfectly reasonable for them to put, for their 5 rep sets or whatever on a squat or a deadlift, to gain 100 or more pounds on it in 6 months is normal. Not even impressive to be honest, that's not even good. Let that one sink in. That's average at best. But when we're talking about people who are through their bit of novice phases, and this rule still applies, as long as your work sets, we're not talking about speed work, we're not talking about your training maxes, although I guess it could apply to training maxes, as long as you're within 5 reps of failure, you're getting a growth stimulus. You're still getting a growth stimulus. Now, a training max, because you're above 90% or more, which is going to be a 3 rep max at best, means what? Well, you're within 5 reps of failure. We could argue for dynamic effort work, the bar is going to slow down. Like, let's say you're doing 9 triples or whatever on this speed bench. Well, obviously, you couldn't sustain that speed for 8 reps. So you're there also in terms of the speed strength. But that's its own animal too. But the idea here is that as long as tension is sufficient to be in that range, we're good. The only time we are not getting a growth stimulus is when that weight and reps have grown so much because you've gained so much muscle that it's no longer challenging. In other words, on an exercise, let's say you've gotten to a point to where 3 sets of 10, because it's a standard modality for a supplemental lift or an assistance movement. Say your 3 sets of 10 with 225 was really hard when you first started doing it. And you keep doing 3 sets of 10 until it gets easier and easier and easier. When it gets to where the last set is no longer a challenging set, because you're probably capable of doing more than 15 reps if you were to push it out, now we're probably no longer seeing a growth stimulus. We're not seeing it anymore. Because people have this idea, they're like, well, training hard. Well, training hard, that's what that means. You're within 5 reps of failure. Now, a lot of novices can't judge that. A lot of times you'll take a novice of the weight, and if you have them take a set all the way out to failure, the weight they've been using for 5 reps, they can squeeze out 12 or 13 if you make them do it. But they have a different feel for it than more advanced lifters. But that is what we mean by training hard. Training hard doesn't mean you have to be slobbering and spitting everywhere and screaming and you can't breathe at all. And, your form is just degrading and you're using shitty form to cheat the weight up, as you get to failure, then you start doing half reps and rest, pause, and everything. That's not necessarily training hard. In fact, we could argue there doesn't even seem to be real benefits to that for muscle growth. You would have gained more muscle had you just done a second set and stopped a couple reps short of failure instead of doing all that at the end of one. Okay, because all you're doing is trying to work fibers that aren't going to work anymore. In other words, you're not re-recruiting them. You're the ones that are really capable of growth. You're kind of just going back to the lowest threshold fibers, and then you're just cheating to move the weight at all, whether it's a half rep, cheating, bad form. That's all you're doing. It's not training hard. It's training stupid, because they're not even quality anymore, and you're not even recruiting new muscle fibers and motor units. You're not even activating them at that point, right? And again, this is why the multiple sets work. People say, but don't a lot of those more intermediate fibers need more total fatigue? Well, yeah, that's why one of the reasons multiple sets work so well, because they're getting a lot more reps that are only those muscle fibers, okay, each time. And as they fatigue each time, we go higher up the chain through rate coding. But the point here is, we don't have to progressively overload. As long as you're in that range, you are creating growth stimulus with each set. Because that's what it comes down to. People say, well, what if the total volume isn't high enough? What if you could have gained more from doing more total work? What if you could have gained more from sleeping or eating more? So is it really the same? Well, yeah, because that's all we're worried about. We're talking about how close to failure you're training, or the progressive overload on the bar. We're talking about on a set-to-set basis. We're not talking about those other factors anyway. Should they all be in place? Of course. If you're really serious about muscle growth, your volume should be relatively close to optimized, within your recovery. Your diet should be pretty close to optimized. And I want people to understand that doesn't mean a specific set of foods. Oh, well, what exactly should I eat for optimal diet? Proper nutrition, high antioxidant status, lots of protein, sufficient calories. Okay, I don't care which foods you use exactly to get there. It's numbers. It's a numbers game, and that numbers includes vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, antioxidants, all those things, right? It's a lot going on there. Eating mostly whole foods, probably. So that's what we're looking at, getting sufficient sleep and rest, good programming. But as far as the growth stimulus itself, we don't have to be adding weight to the bar. The only time we have to always be adding is if we're not getting close enough to failure. And no, I'm not going to entertain what some of the people have asked me. Well, what happens? How could I get really big if I just keep the same weight on the bar forever and just add reps and volume? That's not efficient. Hypothetically, yes, you could, in theory, gain some gains, but it's not going to be efficient. So why would you do that? Right? It's not going to be anywhere near optimal, and you're already going to spend the time in the gym training. So why would you do that just over a silly experiment? Right? That's nonsense. That's bullshit. It's thinking like that that causes people, when they come up with those sort of hypotheticals, by the way, it's a little side tangent. When they come up with those sort of hypotheticals, those are the sort of people who don't make gains. Because they're so caught up in, what if I do this one hypothetical? It may not be optimal, but I still make some gains? Ooh, I want to try it. Because then next they want to try this stupid ass shit. It's not good enough to just think it through. Then they want to actually experiment with it. And then they whine and cry when they don't make the progress they should be making. All right? Forever novice. Shouldn't even have that sort of thought process. It's harmful to your growth. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.